Good morning, everyone, to this next panel where we are continuing in the spirit of engaging and having a lively discussion straight from the coffee break. Let's not lose this spirit. So my name is Karin Reisheim-Baller, and I'm working for the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, and I'll be your moderator of this session. And UNIDO's mandate is basically to accelerate the achievement of the SDG 9. It's to advance and support our member states on inclusive and sustainable industrial development. And I guess we all agree that there's no industrial development anywhere in the world without access to sustainable energy. So we are basically supporting access to sustainable energy for industrialization and also the low-carbon transformation of the existing industrial systems. And therefore, the ESCO work that we are doing is very much geared towards the industrial sector, where we see a very high potential, in particularly in developing and emerging economies. This is the mandate. I think we heard also from our sister organization, UNEP, in the morning, that there is a very high potential, a very untapped and nascent markets in many of these countries where we don't have appropriate financing systems, where we have still a lack of capacity in the ESCO market, where the user awareness of ESCO markets is still rather low, and where there is no cost-reflective tariffs in most countries in place, so the incentives to invest in energy efficiency is rather low. So in this panel now, we are still going to discuss about the regulatory framework, and we are looking at it from two different perspectives, basically. Two different policy types or regulatory aspects. On the one hand, we are looking at regulations that actively incorporate ESCOs and EPCs or enhancing trust in ESCOs. But we are also discussing how policies, that non-ESCO dedicated policies such as climate or energy efficiency policies can be conducive and stimulate the market for ESCOs. We are also in this panel discussing ESCOs in the context of different geographical specifications, I would say, and I'm very happy that we have a distinguished panel here that will give us their insights from the different backgrounds, be it from the industry itself or from working with governments and with industries on implementing concrete ESCO projects. So without further ado, I would like to ask my panelists here to take 1 minute each to just introduce yourself with the name, the organization, and how are you involved in the ESCO market, please.
My name is Zulkifli Zahari. I come from Malaysia. I wear the hat of the President of Malaysian Association of Energy Service Companies, and I'm considered an ESCO.
Hi, I'm Giulia D'Angiolini. I work with Econoler as a principal advisor on sustainable energy, and I'm involved in several ESCO projects that we are developing in the world. Maybe most recently, I worked in the technical support for the program in Brazil, Potencialize, that funded enterprises and ESCOs for energy efficiency measures. And a very, very most recent project is the Super ESCO in France that we launched in January, and I am also involved in this.
Hi, Dhevan Pillay from South Africa. If you don't know where South Africa is a country. It's not South of Africa, it is a country. I know the French take us seriously because we won the back-to-back Rugby World Cup. But for those of you who haven't visited our lovely country, animals do not go out in the street there, right? So please, it is really a growing market. We're 22 years in existence as an ESCO association. As the president, the key aim is to grow the green economy and to make sure that the ESCOs are capacitated. Thank you.
Set the discussion now when we move into the industries quite well. I want to give a few figures because we are currently implementing a project on energy efficiency with a big ESCO component in sub-Saharan Africa. And we've identified basically a serviceable market size of 2.4 billion euros per year in the three regions in sub-Saharan Africa, with 50% of the potential being largely in the industrial sector. And obviously South Africa, Ghana, Kenya leading or spearheading the ESCO market development. Some of the projects, I must say, were the very first ESCO projects in most of the countries. So let's move to Dhevan. And I know you've pointed out the South Africa as a country, but in your title, it covers the Southern African region. So I think you can give us a quite broad perspective of the potential in South Africa, which is obviously very peculiar compared to your neighboring countries, and maybe also the Southern African countries, and which regulatory frameworks probably could be conducive to trigger the markets.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's good to see more women for a change compared to yesterday in the front. Also, Soren, I'd like to firstly thank you and the team. I think yesterday was clearly a gap that I identified. You know, we spoke about NDCs, right? And you know, latching on to regulatory framework. NDCs, I quickly said, what's that? You know what I mean? And I'd like to be ignorant of that. Yes, we knew the countries had targets, what it latched onto. So if anything that the Gen contributed is to be informing me better. And I found a document, and I was reading it this morning, and my colleague, Mason from Japan, I was late. You know, he's a disciplinarian. He was like fixed on a time, and I was late because I was reading this document. It's called the National Energy Efficiency Strategy document. It speaks to the NDCs. And I was shocked that we have such a huge comprehensive document sitting, but it's not livened. Nobody is informed about it. And I'm sure that it's typical in most countries, and I think my colleague from Turkey said the very same thing. There's all these documents sitting there, policies documents, they're not live, they're not enforced, and that's a major, major problem. So thank you for Jen's contribution, not only about networking in different countries and meeting colleagues like from Turkey, Japan, etc., but to be informing me that there is these documents that need to be livened. And we need help. We need help not only from within inside, but also from external help. And we spoke about it here earlier, how you could help the country like us to enforce rules. Now, 22 years in ESCO association being in existence, and now our geographical boundaries is Southern Africa because we're very matured. We're one of the biggest associations in Africa, and probably the oldest, very mature. But what have we done and how we've progressed in the 22 years is something that we need to work on. We heard Tim from the US state the stop-start approach and the chess games that's been played, and that's very same. It's a move and there's a counter move, there's a move and a counter move, and we're not advancing. But if we work as a team collectively, breaking the horizons of just the regional boundaries, but the global side, and I think Jen can play a major role in that. Just from a regulatory framework, we have some powerful stuff. We have the integrated resource plan that speaks to the supply and demand side, but there's such small focus on the demand side, huge focus on the supply side. Now the country is in energy crisis. So of course you can see where the focus is. PV all the way. people will follow the money. Companies will follow the money. So ESCOs, models are just kept in the lay, and then the focus is shifted. So we've got to work on this, and I think, it's breaking those boundaries. We've got some great policies like the, EPCs is used in so many acronyms like engineering, procurement, construction, and now it's energy performance contracting, and the energy performance certificates, EPCs. We've implemented that by law. If you contravene that, I don't know if you know the energy performance certification process. It's a certificate that you put, in the building. It's a name and shame, name or fame thing, right? A to G rating, how efficient the building is. By law, 5 years in prison or 5 million rands if you do not subscribe, because that's by law. Last minute, government buckles down, and all the ESCOs are geared up. We are moving with audits and so forth, and it's so exciting space to be because the policy is in place. Government buckles and says, we'll have to relax it. So who's going to take it seriously? There's a nice policy in place. There's great initiatives. I must commend the government for putting the tax incentives, like the 12L for energy efficiency, and now there's ESCOM incentives, 4.5 billion rands. So there's good carrots there. There's also carbon tax and greenhouse gas compliance certification. That's the whip. But how do you take these whips and turn it into carrots? Through shared savings. You can give an energy performance certification for free because the capex cost is so huge. It's diluted. It's out of the box thinking. I think we got to get to innovation here. But I come back. I think a lot of countries here have all these lovely policies. And for my colleague from Turkey who says, we got these many documents sitting there. How do we enforce that? How do we liven it? And I think that's where the collaboration will come from, not just locally, but globally. Thank you, Chair.